Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sagar Chavda. My presentation topic for today is Thomas Hardy's Poetry and Philosophy, a critical study. These are my academic and presentation details. This is the table of contents. My research question is: how did Thomas Hardy, following his withdrawal from novel writing, forge a unique poetic identity through a complex engagement with the philosophy of determinism, the theme of temporal mutability, and a difficult search for an authentic personal voice? My hypothesis is Hardy's poetry represents a deliberate artistic and philosophical project by taking a full look at the worst. He developed a poetic grounded in the relentless paces of time. His greatest poems succeeded when he abandoned ironic masks and embraces a direct, personal voice, thereby transforming a philosophy of pessimism into a profound art of loving kindness and a fellow feeling. Introduction: the return of the native poet. Just as Carter and Maker says that few poets better convey the uneasy transition from Victorianism to modernism than Thomas Hardy. So in 18, after much hostile reception of Jude the Obscure in 1895, Thomas Hardy devoted himself only to poetry, short story, and dramatic verses, and that's why he can be seen as a bridge from Victorianism to modernism. Freed from the commercial pressure of fiction, Hardy's poetry became the culmination of his life's work, where the great themes of his novels, fate, chance, and human struggle, are distilled into their most potent and personal form. We will explore how this present transition allowed Hardy to develop a poetic defined by a stark philosophical honesty, a profound obsession with time, and a courageous search for a deeply authentic and empathetic voice. Hardy on his art, a poetry of impressions, a rejection of system. Hardy explicitly stated in the apology to his collection, late lyrics and earlier, that his poems were not intended to be a coherent philosophical system. He described his verses as a series of unadjusted impressions, each one an honest response to a particular moment of feeling. His goal for this was the ultimate aim of his poetry was as he saw it was not to prove a bleak worldview but to awaken a sense of empathy. The purpose of taking a full look at the worst was to find a path towards loving kindness and a fellow feeling by recognizing the shared human struggle against an indifferent universe. Hardy was aware that his poetic style was often seen as crazy and awkward. This was a deliberate choice. He rejected smooth, conventional Victorian poetics in favor of a style that could more accurately reflect the dissonant and often jarring nature of modern experience and memory. The philosophical core, a full look at the worst. At the heart of Hardy's poetry is a deterministic worldview. This philosophy posits an immanent will or a prime mover. These are two main themes or philosophical ideas of Thomas Hardy's poetry. That it is a blend, unconscious force that governs the universe without reason or compassion, weaving human lives into patterns of suffering by chance. Hardy believed it was the artist's duty to confront this harsh reality without flinching. His poetry insists that humanity must take a full look at the worst to find any meaningful path forward, refusing the comfort of sentimental illusions. In this framework, humanity is a fleeting, petite, tragic thing, a brief flicker of consciousness in a vast, indifferent cosmos. Our capacity for love and memory is both our glory and the source for our deepest pain. The tyranny of time, mutability, and the past. The single most dominant theme of all Hardy's poetry is time and mutability. His work is a sustained meditation on the destructive power of time and its tragic consequences of human love, memory, and identity. The past in Hardy's poetry is rarely a source of comfort. Instead, memory becomes a form of inner haunting, where moments of past joy return only to emphasize the pain of present loss. The past is a ghost that can never be fully exorcised. The then, which is now dynamic, many of his most powerful lyrics are structured around a stark contrast between a vibrant then and a desolate now. This structure highlights the irreversible and often cruel changes with wrought by time, making loss the central human experience. A poetic time, a poetics of time, form, meter, and memory. Irregular crazy meters, just as many critics described his poetry. In thematic function, Hardy often breaks from smooth conventional rhythms. This creates a jarring, awkward music that mirrors the unpredictable and often harsh nature of life and the disjointed experience of memory. The prime example of it could be the Darkling Thrush, published in 31st December 1800, 1900. Complex stanza form. He frequently invented intricate and unusual stanza patterns. These complex structures can act as containers for chaotic emotions, suggesting an attempt to impose order on the painful randomness of memory and time. In poetic techniques, use of dialect and all words, just as he does in his poem Friends Beyond. Repetition and refrain. The use of refrains and repetition phrase from mimic the act of obsessive memory, where a particular world of image returns again and again, like a ghost that cannot be laid to rest. The prime example could be during wind and rain. The search for an authentic voice. A central struggle in Hardy's poetry is the search for an authentic voice. In many poems, he hides behind the mask of a persona or a cynical, ironic tone, which serves to distance him from his own feelings. This irony often functions as a defense mechanism, a shield, or an escape from the direct and painful expression of emotion. When this ironic voice dominates, the poem can feel bitter, dishonest, and emotionally hollow. Honesty and artifice. The search for an authentic voice represents a deep commitment to honesty. For his poetry to achieve its goal of fellow feeling, it had to be grounded in a simple but profoundly honest expression of thought and feelings. A case study in voice, irony, which is metaphor. The voice of irony is the weaker poetry, and the voice of metaphor, the great poetry. The hope in the gloom, a reassessment beyond simple pessimism. While Hardy's philosophy is undeniably bleak, it is critical misreading to label him as a simple pessimist, just as we do in his with his novels. His work is not a celebration of despair, but a courageous confrontation with it. The Darkling Thrush is a test case. This poem perfectly illustrates the concept. Amid a desolate, wraith-like winter landscape, a frail thrush suddenly sings a song of ecstatic sound. The speaker can see no rational cause for this joy, yet the song itself exists as an undeniable fact. For the conclusion, Thomas Hardy wrote more than 900 poems, and he was a kind of the poet reborn because the end of his novel writing career was not a failure but a rebirth, allowing Thomas Hardy to find his truest and most powerful medium in poetry. His poetry endures because of his unflinching honesty. It confronts a deterministic philosophy and a relentless passage of time, refusing easy answers in favor of unadjusted impressions. For my learning outcomes, I came to know from this presentation that Hardy did not write only novels, but he also ventured into another fields such as lyric poetry, and this is the full dimension of his literary career. These are my references. Thank you. If anyone has any question.
So, Sagar, I want to ask that beyond the novel and lyric poetry, did Thomas Hardy's literary output extend to other genres?
Uh, as we know, Thomas Hardy is majorly famous for his novels, and in this presentation we discussed about his poetry as well. And apart from poetry and novels, Hardy ventured into the field of verse drama as well. In the first decade of the 20th century, he published the Dynads in three parts, and the apart from that, the exploration of his fictional town, the Wessex, was left after novels, but he did continue with exploring his fictional town Wessex by publishing short stories as well. That includes Wessex Tales and Life's Little Ironies. Any other question, please?
What event caused Thomas Hardy to stop writing novels and return to poetry?
As you know, Thomas Hardy was a kind of pessimistic writer, and in his novel, and especially in his last novel, Jude the Obscure, it was received by the audience so hostilely, so that he did not continue with writing novels and started rewriting poetry. That is, before writing novel, he was writing poetry, and after the much hostile reception of his novels, he started writing poetry again. Thank you, everyone.